And tonight on PM Express, a conversation about the welfare of our children. You may be aware that caterers of the school feeding program in the Ashanti region and then in Greater Accra have gone on strike. They say they will not cook for the children when they return to school unless their 6 months arrears have been paid. You question why, with all the allocations that have been given to the school feeding program, why should these debts accumulate? But of course, we would also be talking about how these strikes, because we've been back and forth with this one. I mean, when it happens, government will get them into talks. They return, few weeks, they are back. We are back to square one. We'll be asking why we're going back and forth, because this certainly affects the performance of the basic school children who benefit from this. Not to talk about the quality of meals served these children, which caterers say their hands are tied unless government increase the daily stipend of 97 pesos to 3 cities before they can give them the quality we're looking for. This is what we're talking about, 97 pesos. In fact, today, if you want to buy roasted plantain, Kofi Brookman, I mean, just, you can tell how much it is. It's actually 2 cities or 3 cities. And you're talking about a whole meal. You want it to be nutritional for these kids, and they're paying 97 pesos. So the caterers say you can't even get the meals that you describe as not being quality for the kids when they return from school unless government pays us our money. Is the school feeding program in crisis? What will it take for it to be fixed? Let's look at some statistics. And of course, I started by telling you how much the caterers are getting daily. It's 97 pesos. So they've withdrawn their services and they expect arrears from 2021 to 2022 academic year. And they say they've only received payment for the first term. Now, the feeding grant should be increased, according to the caterers, to 3 cities. And they have cited inflation for the reason. And of course, you and I will bear witness. This is the yearly food inflation. On the average, look at how it has gone since 2014. And just after 2016, in the middle there, it dropped a little to 7.3, then came back. Then in 2020, it started going up marginally. Look at where we are. In 2020, it started with 11.8. Now we have climbed all the way to 33.7. And the caterers are still receiving 97 pesos. Now, this is the response of the regional minister when the caterers picketed at his office in the Ashanti region. He actually turned his back on them. He says he's unhappy with the chance and refusal to calm down. And then he said the caterers did not follow due process. And you ask, what exactly is due process? Thankfully, the school feeding secretariat will be on this show to explain to us what the due process is and why the caterers did not go through due process and why our children must suffer because of this. But this is the yearly allocation in million Ghana cedis for the school feeding program. So in 2018, it started with 428.8 million. In 2019, agreeably, it came down to 200 million. Now, 2020, we went up to 470 million. 2021, 488.8 million. Look at 2022, look at 2023. It's gone up, almost double from 2021. In 2022, you had 881 million for the school feeding program. Now, in 2023, we have 968 million. One would have thought that we had crossed this path. We wouldn't come back here. But here we are finding ourselves back here. But this is why this program is very significant. The number of schools that benefit from the school feeding program. In total, public basic schools, we have 30,848. And out of this number, you have 10,832 benefiting from the school feeding program. So you can imagine if this whole program is not working, how many pupils in the basic school are challenged, 10,832. Now, the caterers who have been employed to do the cooking, 32,496 of them. And if you want to do the calculation, you realize that each caterer has 106 children. One caterer is catering for 106 children. So even if one caterer goes off, you can imagine how dire the situation would be. Talk less of 2 regions going off. This is serious, and this is the thrust of our conversation tonight. I would introduce to you my guest after this break. Thank you so much for sticking with us on PM Express. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Let me introduce my guest to you. And Dr. Emmanuel Aifa is the Deputy Country Director of St. Ghana. Dr. Clementa Park is a Deputy Ranking Member on Parliament's Committee on Education. Dr. Peter Anti is Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies. I must say that we invited Siba Alpha, who is the Public Relations Officer at the School Feeding Program Secretariat, but he still hasn't joined. Alpha, if you can hear me, kindly join so that we can start the conversation. And I'm told that Dr. Kofi Asari, who is with Africa Education Watch, has also joined. I'm grateful for your time, gentlemen, this evening. Let me start with you, Dr. Anti. I want to pick your initial reactions to what has happened. Caterers from 2 regions have decided to go on strike because they're demanding arrears. Now, school resumes next week. And we know how dire this will be if they don't get 1 meal a day to support them in school. I mean, your quick observations, Dr. Anti. Kindly unmute for me, Dr. Anti.
Sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to the panel and your viewers. Yes, I feel that it is very disturbing that we are having this challenge. Of course, it is something that was not anticipated, because if you have followed the issue of school feeding for some time now, you would see that this has been what the general trend is. The caterers keep complaining about the amount of money that is being paid them, that they also use to feed the students. And of course, if you do analysis of the amount that is being paid, as we did earlier on before this interaction, you would agree with me that it is wholly inadequate to feed students. So the end result is that the caterers are providing food for the kids that are not nutritious. They are not the kind of food that you would want to give your ward, and that defeats one of the principles or the guiding principles of the school feeding program, because apart from the fact that you are looking for value for money, you are also looking for quality service delivery. You also want a situation whereby the feeding of the kids would address the nutritional challenges that you think that the school feeding program is supposed to do. So if the caterers are not going to work, then definitely another reason why we introduced the school feeding, which is to ensure that the students, after they have been admitted, or they are accessing the free basic education, the students are also kept in school. The variable of retention is also going to be defeated, because students would want to find ways and means to feed themselves. And we should understand the schools that are benefiting from this school feeding program. Most of them are from very deprived communities, and they really need this kind of school feeding to ensure that the students stay in school and curtail the issue of absenteeism and dropout. So these are the end results of what we are going to experience if we do not sit down and have the hard conversation about this whole school feeding program, the way we have implemented it, the way we are implementing it, and the challenges that have engulfed it since the introduction of the policy. if we don't have that hard conversation, I think tonight we're going to say some of the things as it is. If we don't have that hard conversation, we will have this issue coming up every now and then, because there are basic principles that we are violating, and we are violating that because we are not following the laid down even framework that was developed for the program by the ministry or the institution responsible for it. And I think that we need to say it as it is, and ensure that the right things are done going forward, so that the benefits of this particular policy or program would be realized by all stakeholders.
Dr. Ifa, you've been doing a lot of research around this area, education, poverty, development. Why do we keep returning to this situation?
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity. I believe it's an issue of commitment. We are here because we have government always paying lip service to social protection in general, and in particular in our education sector. So for me, it's a sheer issue of government not being committed to this cause, not prioritizing social protection in general, and in more particular as far as the school feeding is concerned. You know the importance of helping to reduce hunger, and a lot of research has also really showed that school feeding actually helps increase school enrollment and attendance. I see my friend Africa Education Watch on the program, and I'm sure they have done some work in line with this, as SEN also have done so. It might interest you to know that a cost-benefit analysis that was done, I think in 2019, showed that every 1 Ghana cedi invested in the school feeding program turns out 3.3 Ghana cedis over the lifetime of a pupil. And so if you have a program that has that attendant benefit to the economy, because there are also economy-wide effect of looking at the local terrain, the fact that they have to use food from the local economy. And so if you are not committed to this, I don't know what government really want to do. So I think that it's a sheer fact that government is not prioritizing this at all. That is what I would say.
Do we have Dr. Clement Apak? He's in Parliament, and they're supposed to be overseeing some of these things. Well, when we get him, he'll be addressing that issue for us. But what I also know is that certainly this will affect the quality of learning. Already, we've been complaining about the dwindling performance of the basic schools. And if we are having to face this challenge, how will it affect us? Dr. Kofi Asare is with Africa Education Work. Kofi Asare, I know that you've also done some work around this area. How dire is the situation if we are not getting the 1 meal per day for our basic school pupils?
Good evening, Aisha. Good evening to my fellow panelists and to your audience. I think it cannot be overemphasized or re-emphasized the fact that the school feeding program is highly complementary, of the basic education program. It's actually one of the main reasons why in many communities we've seen increasing enrollment, and retention, in primary school. The teachers will tell you that there comes a time during the school period where students can leave school and go to the house to go and find food to eat. And they will return in about an hour or an hour and a half because of the distance committed to school. And you can imagine the instructional hours that they will miss. And so there are so many dimensions to the importance of the school feeding program, not only to enrollment, but also to participation in the learning process and retention in school. Various evaluation studies have been done on the school feeding program in the past, if you like, 18 years. and all points to improvement in teaching and in learning, cognitive development, in nutrition, and also in access. That is why, for me, it is one of the most important interventions to facilitate Ghana's attainment of SDG 4, especially at the primary level.
Now, what we've been talking about, and I'm happy that Dr. Peter Anti made mention of the quality of food that is fed to these children. Definitely, 97 pesos is nothing to write home about. And I did indicate whilst I was doing the presentation that even if you wanted to buy Kofi Brookman, I'm talking about roasted plantain today, you need about 10 cedis to be able to get a handful to actually enjoy. And we're talking about less than 1 cedis. 1 cedi is actually for probably sachet water today, if you ask me. So how on earth is 97 pesos adequate for one person in a day?
You see, I keep saying this, that in Ghana, our approach towards social protection and inclusion, okay, or if you like, disability rights, is normally that of an act of charity or pure tokenism. Pure tokenism. Because, look, in 2018, when the per unit cost of the school feeding program was increased to 97 or 98 pesos, at that same time, lunch for day students in senior high schools was about 1 cedi 60 pesos. That was in 2018. Today, lunch for senior high schools is 3 cedis. So why is it that still lunch for basic school people is still 97 or 98 pesos? You understand? So the approach in the education sector is a realist approach that takes into full cognizance the effect of price changes. Okay. But the other approach is, I will call it an act of charity, that we'll just throw anything we have at them and they will manage. I don't think social protection should be approached as an act of charity or a tokenistic venture. It has to be a deliberate, policy by government. It is a responsibility. And so, yes, the 97 or 96 pesos is nothing to write home about. It's a non-starter, and it cannot facilitate the attainment of the objectives of the school feeding program. And that is why we are saying that the 3 cedis the caterers are demanding is consistent with the economic realities, because the caterers buy from the same market that the senior high school caterers also buy their food stuff. So why is it that one person's lunch is 3 cedis, which they are even crying is still inadequate, and another person's lunch is below 1 cedi? You understand? So there's a problem, and I believe that yes, these are 2 different ministries, but as I'm saying, the approach in funding social protection in Ghana is not convincing to me to be called a priority. The approach is normally that of a charitable one. We must depart from it and be intentional and realize that it is the responsibility of the state to provide these safety nets and social support for the poor. Other than that, we will not be building an equitable society.
Interestingly, between 2021 and 2022 and 2023, you realize that allocation for the program has been increased. What do you call it? It's increased to, I think,
969
in 2023. That's a significant increase. And if you compare to other years, then it's significant increase. So why are we still here, Dr. Ifa?
Yeah. Just before then, let me just add a little to what Kofi said in respect of the allocation, the 3 Ghana cedis. In fact, as far back as last year, 2022, I think 2021, 2020, that was when there was a call to increase the grant to 3 Ghana cedis. And you know, at that time, we didn't have inflation skyrocketing than now. So for me, the 3 Ghana cedis that they are calling for, it's really even not enough. But considering the state of the economy, I think that if for nothing at all, 3 Ghana cedis is okay. Yes, in terms of the issue about allocation, you are right on that. Between 2021 to 2022, indeed, there was an increase of about 80% per budget analysis estimate that we did. The issue has been that in most instances, you find out that so much is allocated, but when it comes to disbursement, then there's an issue.
Okay.
And so in our budget analysis over time, we've realized that budget credibility, not only in Ghana school feeding program, but in all our social protection programs, has been an issue. The point is that why would you allocate so much, and then when it comes to disbursement, we have wide deviations in disbursement. If you look at the ministry's budget, I mean the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection budget for this year, and over time, that is mostly how it looks like. Always, you realize that the school feeding share is very huge in terms of proportion to other allocations. And so if you've really allocated it, why don't you disburse? And what we've realized, I mean, some of the analysis that we've done also shows that at the end of the year, we find out that yes, the allocated amount are actually given, but just that they are given late. But the point is that once you contracted these caterers, why wouldn't you give them the money? Where do you expect them to get the money from? Our social protection mirror report, we published a mirror report 2021 looking at citizen assessment. When we spoke to caterers, we spoke to school authorities. They actually indicated that the fact that one, they have to even go borrowing just so that they can prepare meals for the school children. And Kofi touched on something about looking at the fact that it actually affects instructional time. The fact of the matter is that some caterers we interviewed also even indicated that because they have to go in search of money and sometimes virtually beg to get items on credit, they delay in even preparing the food, and that affects instructional hours. And so we just do not understand why government, you allocate every year. Then at best you shouldn't allocate, but you don't allocate and fail to actually disburse. There's something possibly that I need to point out to the caterers that at least I watched the news item and some are blaming the Ministry of Gender. In our deliberation with the ministry, sometimes they cannot help it because if Ministry of Finance do not release the money, there's little that the gender ministry can do. And so if the Minister for Finance is actually watching, we want to tell the ministry that they always put the Ministry of Gender at tight corner. Why would you allocate and wouldn't disburse? Kofi was charitable, but let me be blunt about it. The government seems not to care so much about basic education. You are always just looking at secondary education. Yes, you've been given the 3 cities, Ghana's secondary education. Why are you not prioritizing the basic? Because the foundation is important. Looking at the attendant positive effect of school feeding. So for me, it's a sheer non-seriousness of government, non-commitment of government to actually disburse allocated amount to the school feeding secretariat.
Dr. Ifa, should we go back to the situation where parents were taking full charge of meals for their wards to be in school?
In fact, I wouldn't say so, because the fact is that we've clearly seen the report, the research out there has clearly alluded to the attendant positive effects of the school feeding program. As I said, it's not really an issue of just curtailing hunger and malnutrition. There's a local economy-wide effect. As the caterer buys items from the local economy, those who are selling those products also get money.
Yep.
And for that matter, I wouldn't go that way. The fact of the matter is that we've committed to this, and I believe that we have to. Because always trying to curtail such, I do not think that that is the way to go. Government needs to find money. We use money for certain frivolous expenditures, certain expenditures that are not necessary. That would not really inure to the long-term benefit of our development. If we had to decide on buying certain things for elections quickly, both politicians, both on the NDC or the MPP side, will quickly agree to that. If it has to be buying V8 and whatnot, people will be quick to do that. We've been discussing cutting down government machinery, cutting down government expenditure on certain sectors that are not necessary. Recently, we heard about is it 800 or so presidential staffers. You can imagine if we had to cut this to take care of the school children. After all, how much are we asking of? We are looking at just about 10,000 schools. We are looking at just around 32 or 34 or so million people. I mean, why can't we get that thing done for them? So I wouldn't really go that way. The fact is that most parents do not have the means. I mean, that is what actually culminated in the school feeding program coming anyway. As Kofi alluded to the fact, sometimes they have to go home to get food. But the point is whether really they even get the food that they want to get at home. So I wouldn't say so. Government need to be committed to that. Thank you.
Dr. Anti, what would it take to actually deal with this back and forth and actually fix the problems that we're having with this program, considering the fact that we've all agreed it's very important? Dr. Anti?
Go back to the, hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Go back to the policy document. Implement the policy as enshrined in the policy document. And that is the first angle to look at, because in the policy document, it is clearly stated the various sources of funding for the policy. I think there are about 5 different sources that the document speaks about. The government is one. I think the private sector, fundraising by the school feeding secretariat. There are about 5 different angles that the policy document indicates that resources can be sourced from. So go back to the policy document and look at it. And look at that. Again, go back to the policy document and look at the conceptual framework that was developed in support for the implementation of the school feeding program. And make sure that you are implementing it solely based on the thinking and the principle that informed the development of that particular conceptual framework. So that you do not make the school feeding program an avenue to pay political party people. Because if you are recruiting, and I need to say this, if you are recruiting people based on the political affiliation, you throw away professionalism. And that is why they are giving the children this kind of food. And that is why they cannot complain forcefully the amount of money that they are being paid, because you are recruiting them based on political patronage. So if you are recruiting them based on professionalism, then they can insist that they are paid an amount that will enable them deliver the service that they are supposed to deliver. Then you can also do the quality assurance that you need to do to ensure that they are providing the needed food for the kids. But we are doing this as a form of political party, another group within the political party, so that the party comes to power and they have their women organizers, and these are parts on the ground. They have their women organizers taking charge of the school feeding program. So you don't have any professionalism in that sector. And because you don't have that, they cannot push for the amount of money that they need to be able to deliver the service that they have to deliver. So the principle is go back to the policy document, look at what you said you would do in terms of the implementation, in terms of the principles, in terms of your conceptualization of the policy. and then make sure you are implementing it solely to suit that. And if we do that, I think we'll be able to solve this problem. If we don't do that, we will continue to have this problem coming up, and it's going to be difficult for us to achieve the benefits of this particular important policy. As I said, after we have done 10 years of the FQ, we realized that two things were happening. Some of the students were going to school, but at the same time, we saw absenteeism and retention rates going down. So we introduced this to ensure that absenteeism is curtailed, and then retention is improved. And these two variables have improved over the years because of the school feeding program, aside the nutritional values and other things that the other panelists have spoken about. So we need to protect it. And to protect it, let's go back to the policy document and do the right things that we have to do to ensure that this is sustained.
The Education Committee of Parliament, and that was why I was hoping that Dr. Clement Apak, who is Deputy Ranking Member, would join to give us some update. They play an oversight responsibility or oversight role over how some of these programs are managed. Kofi Asare, has the committee failed us?
Unfortunately, I wish to indicate that the Education Select Committee has a lot on its plate. And the school feeding program hasn't fallen under its purview. It actually is not an education sector intervention, it's a social protection intervention. So it doesn't squarely fall under its purview.
It should be a joint, it should be a joint role, responsibility.
Yes, they have a response. They have some level of. They must be concerned because what happens to the school feeding program affects education at the basic level.
Correct.
But even the committees directly responsible, for social protection and all of that, they have even found it challenging. You see, look at this within the broader social protection strategy of government. Look at LEAP. The last time LEAP was increased was about 2018 or so. So we've been giving 88 cedis by monthly to three beneficiary households since 2018. Okay, we've been giving the same amount of money to the poorest of the poor as the cash grant for living support. The same amount of money given the inflation rate over the past 5-6 years. So if you look carefully at the budget of the Ministry of Gender, and more specifically at the budget of these two social protection activities, Ghana School Feeding Program and then LEAP, it tells you how, as a country, we perceive social protection as an act of charity. We are not serious about it. I want to see the Minister of Finance go to Parliament in June or so with the mid-term or the supplementary budget and enhance the 960 million allocation to the school feeding program by at least 200%, because they need 3 cities to cook a decent meal. I have been in schools across the country, and I'm telling you that none of the managers of the program, none of the officials at the Ministry of Finance who are suffocating the school feeding program of funding will be happy, okay, to serve the food being served in the schools on the table of their wards. Okay, so we shouldn't encourage this. The Minister of Finance should find 2 billion cedis and then add it to the 960 million already allocated, so that the school feeding program will have 3 billion cedis to provide a decent lunch costing 3 cedis, just as government is doing it for their students in senior high schools. This is not impossible. But most importantly, in the medium term, we see that the Ministry of Finance projects to reduce funding for school feeding program by 23% in 2025. And all these cuts have been done, of course, to appease the IMF. They are all in response to IMF's expenditure cuts, conditionalities. Otherwise, why will government project to reduce school feeding program allocation from how much we are even complaining now, further by 23% to 770 million in 2025. Is it the case that government intends to reduce the number of beneficiaries from 3.4 million? So the entire medium-term expenditure framework of the school feeding program will have to be reviewed and made reflective of the current economic realities. Other than that, then I'm sorry, we need to have a different discussion, because I'm not convinced that, you know, the school feeding program is this government's priority at all.
Dr. Ifa mentioned how government is prioritizing the senior high school and actually neglecting the basic school. And he tried to draw a correlation between the basic school and SHS, because if you don't have the foundation, it will be difficult to actually get people into the senior high school. You have also had cause to complain about this. I mean,
that is a fact. That is a fact. No more worth debating. It's just gospel. I mean, yeah. Senior high school students are getting school uniforms. Okay, senior high school students are getting school uniforms and are free senior high school. Basic school students are not getting school uniforms. Senior high school students are enjoying free exercise books. Basic school students are not getting free exercise books. Senior high school students are getting free notebooks. Basic school students are not getting free notebooks. Senior high school students are enjoying PE kits. PE kits. Basic school students do not have that luxury. Senior high school students are enjoying 3 CDs for lunch. Basic school students are struggling to have 0.97 pesos even paid. So the two are poles ahead. You can't compare the two. So that discussion ended long ago.
How dangerous is this?
That is what we call inequitable spending. When you spend the taxpayers' money inequitably, you create and deepen the foundations for inequality. That's what happens. Because we all know that public basic education is a commodity consumed by the poor. It's only the poor who take their children to public basic schools. We know. At least I can say that 90% or more of students who attend public basic schools are coming from poor households. Okay, so if you have this information that poor households are those who patronize public basic education, to what extent do you move all these goodies to secondary schools in the name of free senior high school and turn a deaf ear to what is happening in the basic school? So that is the reality. But we as citizens need to see beyond political party affiliations and begin to speak against some of these things. If we don't speak against some of these things, especially the citizens, the media will talk about it. Development practitioners will always talk about it because no one feeds us. I mean, our opinions are totally detached from our stomachs, and so we speak the truth and we put them the way it is. But citizens must speak up, okay, and let the government understand that you can't run a social sector with such inequitable financing approaches. And most importantly, we must make it clear, sufficiently clear to the government that we don't want to promote an era where a party comes into government and then they run the social sector based on flagship. No, this flagship governance must end. So if you are not our flagship, you wait. When we finish eating and there's some, then we give you some. We must. So citizens must be clear, blunt to government, that this flagship governance is not consistent with the directive principle of state policy. It's discriminatory. And we want to start with the basic education neglect. And we want to see government, we want to see government change this paradigm.
Is that Dr. Ifa or Dr. Anti?
Yes, I wanted you to even add to what my brother Kofi is saying.
Yes.
Now, on the average, if you speak to any parent who's got a child in a private school, on the average, they are paying 10 cedis a day. 10 cedis a day. So if that is what is pertaining the private school, why do we encourage the government to pay 97 pesos a day?
Even that is not forthcoming.
It doesn't make sense. And when you talk about some of these things, you get people coming out to defend and try to we are not helping ourselves. And the more we continue this way, I keep saying that we are widening the gap of inequality between the private school child and the public school child. The private school child has got access to textbooks, they've got access to other materials that they need to teach. The public school child has got no access to that. And it's simply because it's government who is supposed to provide for. So if government is not willing to do some of these things, then we need to have a conversation around some of these and see how best to be able to help the kids in the public school to also get the quality education that they deserve.
It does look like government hasn't been able to deal with the situation this whole week, because earlier I spoke with the public relations office of the secretariat, who explained to me that they really haven't moved the issue forward. And so it seemed those who have the responsibility of oversight, like the Poverty Alleviation Committee and the Education Committee of Parliament, must step in quickly, especially as we know our kids are going to school next week. What do you want them to do, Dr. Anti? Hello, Dr. Anti.
I just hope they can do something. I think that if they can do something, they should step in as early as possible and try and then do it. Because the reason why I'm saying I just hope they can do something is that this issue has been on the table for a long time, and people, in fact, those committees seems not to show much interest, and even if they have, it has not yielded any result. So maybe we need to take it a step further and then talk to the authorities, the vice president, the president, to step in at this time and ensure that the basic school system is given the needed attention. I think that is the level that we should go. So the vice president and the president should step in and ensure that caterers that are supposed to feed these kids are given the needed kind of assistance and paid the requisite sum of money that they need to be able to feed these kids. That should be the focus now, and I strongly believe that if we take it that high, it will yield the immediate response. But going forward, we need to ensure that we do the implementation based on the laid down rules that we have in the documents that we've developed for this particular program, because we shouldn't let this program also collapse, as most of the other programs have ended up in this country.
No, Dr. Ifa, going forward, what do you recommend? How do we go about this program, especially as we've all agreed that is very important? And of course, if we lose this program, we'll be losing other things as far as education is concerned.
Thank you. A quick one. I believe that Parliament has the power to call the Minister for Finance, can summon the minister to come and answer why there's been incessant delays. And if the president is watching, Mr. President, you can step in. The fact is that the school feeding program was instituted by your own government in 2005. President Kufuor instituted that, and MPP actually rallied around, and that was one of your biggest campaign messages at the time, and you keep talking about it. So I believe that has to be done. President, you need to look at it. Going forward, I think the call for increasing the amount to 3 cedis is apt. We need to peg that to inflation. Another thing is that by the time we look at fiscal space for social protection in general, in this way we are talking about school feeding. So let's stay to that. But if you are broadening it, we need to look at the fiscal space that is shrunk for social protection. So it is important that when monies are allocated, it needs to be disbursed. So budget execution rate is critical. These are the things that I believe we need to do. Prioritize that. I wouldn't call for a fund, because there have been a lot of fund being established, and you don't really see the head or tail of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that let us try as much as possible to disburse as much as is allocated, because we are here mainly because of the fact that the fund that has been allocated has not been dispersed. And if we also try to forget about politicization, in our mirror report, it became evident. And today, in one of your sister stations, the caterers themselves confessed that yes, all of them are MPP party, women, whatever. And so we need to begin to depoliticize such. And in fact, it was so disappointing seeing what the Asante regional minister did. If you cannot pay them, find a nice way to talk to them. You do not throw your hands and then be rude to such people. So I believe that that is what has to be done. I support the caterers. They need to be.
Kofi, should we hit the streets? Because some say sometimes that's the only language government understands.
Well, I belong to a school of thought that believes that policies in the basic education sector do not have patrons, do not have policy guarantors. And it's about time we get guarantors in the basic education sector. What do I mean? If you touch free senior high school, okay, you will see that the policy has guarantors. It has patrons. And so even if a headmaster is charging 1 cedi somewhere, it will cause a state of emergency somewhere in the ministry. But basic education issues, there's no champion. I ask myself, every day you see caterers demonstrating about school feeding program. When are we going to see parents whose children are being fed with this, this inadequate food, talk about the situation and protest, bearing in mind that their taxes are being used to finance this program? I want to see a community mobilize. I want to see PTAs show much more interest in the quality of food, the regularity of food, and the management of the school feeding program, because their children are the beneficiaries. I want to see community radio do more and more sensitization and mobilization of opinions of the people whose children are the direct consumers of the school feeding program, so that it won't be Kofi Asare or Peter or Ima, whose children perhaps may not be attending public schools, who will be talking every day. And then politicians will call us, oh, these are the usual suspects. These are always complaining. No. The parents whose children are being fed with rice without fish, and all this kind of foods that we see on the field, should begin to speak up. Because these parents attend political party rallies. They go to church. They have time for other activities. Why are they afraid to talk about the conditions under which their children are being kept in school or are being fed in school, especially when their taxes are involved? So that should be done. And finally, all around the world, SFPs, school feeding programs that have succeeded, have had a critical dose of communal ownership. This school feeding program we have here wasn't envisioned at the initial stages. It was born out of a NEPAD document, strategy. It wasn't designed to be a procurement activity to be gifted to political party royals. No. It was actually designed to be something more of a homegrown policy with support from government. Okay. So we want to see much more community involvement in the management of the school feeding program, so that when things are going on wrong, the communities will be much more attached to the program. As it is now, the communities see that the thing is procurement activity that has been gifted to party loyalists. And so they are even afraid to talk about the quality, because if you talk about the party person doing a contract, a teacher might end up being transferred. That's the reality. So let's encourage communal ownership, communal involvement, and interest in the school feeding program, so that when things are going bad like they are today, you will see SMCs, you will see PTAs, you will see assembly members, parents of the pupils who are being fed with this food will come and speak for their children. That's what we need.
Hopefully, government will resolve this issue before school reopens next week, because definitely we all agree that if it doesn't happen, it will affect the people
And the
who
Minister of Finance should
depend
disburse the
on
money.
this. The Minister of
Disburse.
Finance
Disburse.
definitely must disburse funds for these caterers to have their money. We'll be looking keenly into those issues and ensure that something positive happens before the kids go to school. Thank you so much, Kofi Asare. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel Aifa with Send Ghana, and Dr. Peter Anti is with IFS. I'm grateful that you joined us. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Do enjoy the rest of our program.